There is an aspect of growth that is not much talked about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Message Over Gaming podcast. Thank you for being here. So, as I was saying, there is an aspect of growth that doesn't get much talked about. You see, we live in a world where growth is celebrated, and largely growth is thought of to be accumulation, expansion, self-maximization. We are told that these are all the things that growth is about. It's really just about more. How much you can possess, how much you can reclaim, how much of yourself you can maximize. Hustle, hustle, hustle. It's about speed, heading in that direction. That's what we are told that growth is about. But growth is more than expansion. Growth is more than accumulation. It's more than a self-maximization. There is another side of growth that doesn't get much press, much attention this day, and that aspect of growth is what we'll be talking about on this episode. The aspect of growth we'll be focusing on this episode is not for everybody. I dare say it's really not for everybody. It's for a specific type of audience, a specific set of people, and that aspect of growth is less as a strategy for growth, less as a strategy for success in life in today's world. Yeah, I did say that it's not for everybody. It's for a specific type of persons. If this episode is for you, you most likely are someone who, in as much as you are creative, you are intelligent, you are ambitious, you are hardworking, you've tried to make headway in life, you've tried to be successful at what you do, you've tried to provide evidence for the overwhelming sense of potential, that sense of overbearing potential that you've always carried within you over the course of your life from the day that you realized yourself and your identity. This episode is especially for people who understand that intelligence can paralyze, creativity easily becomes anxiety, ambition, that thing called ambition, is really just about self-punishment. Yeah, like I said, this episode is really not for everybody. But if for some reason you can understand how intelligence becomes paralysis, creativity becomes anxiety, and ambition is self-punishment, then this episode is for you. You are most likely the kind of person that the traditional idea, the traditional way of doing things, what works for most people around you, does not always apply to you, does not always give you the same result. You are the kind of person that I describe as someone who is born with a sense of more. There are a set of people in the world who are born with an overflowing cup of potential. There are a set of people in the world who are born with an overflowing cup of potential. And that's the problem. You've always had this idea, this voice, this kind of like instinct within yourself, this self-assurance, this inner actualization that you are so much more than you present to be. And it's not about spirituality here. Nobody is talking about spirituality or metaphysics, inclusive, yeah, but that's not really what it's about. It's about knowing within yourself that you are intelligent, but it's not reflected in your certificate. It's about that knowing, that acknowledgement of inner creativity, but it's not reflected in your self-expression. It's about high ambition that becomes a form of punishment, self-limitation. These are the people that this episode is for, because the cultural dictation, things that work for most people do not work for this particular set of person. And today on this episode, this is for you. You can't fill a cup that is already full. You can't dance in a room that is packed with furniture. You are that cup, by the way. You are that room, by the way. When your inner self is clustered with noise, movement becomes impossible. When the inner self is clustered with noise, movement becomes impossible. If this episode is for you, you really want to pay special attention to this. If this episode is for you, your strategy to life, your strategy to success in life and productivity, showing up more as the person that you truly are, is actually less and not more. You have to understand that for most people, it's all about accumulation, building, proving a point, evidence, results. But for you as a person who is already more, who was born with that overwhelming sense of more, that still voice, that sensitivity within yourself, it's really not about becoming more. It's not about showing up in the world. It's really not about showing up in your own life as more, but rather it's about less. Less is your strategy for growth. Less is your strategy for success in life. It's about becoming less, not more. But here's the problem, and I am aware that what I'm talking about sounds counterintuitive. I mean, we live in this world. I live in this world, so I'm familiar with the idea of growth, which is all about expansion, accumulation, and becoming more. You know, the hustle, the chase, and prove. And you need all that doctorate degree to prove that you are intelligent. You need to look and come across a certain way. And even when you are able to come across the way that you are expected to, it is not enough. You just have to keep chasing. We are told that the chase, the hustle, the greed is part of life. We have also been conditioned to believe that becoming less is weakness. That's usually why this aspect of growth, this side of growth, is not much talked about or encouraged. It's because it's thought of to be weakness. You know the saying that there's no virtue in poverty. Of course, there's no virtue in poverty. There's no reason why you should be poor. Poverty is not a real thing. It's not invented by the universe. The universe does not recognize poverty. It does not recognize negativity. It only recognizes abundance. Poverty is manufactured by man. Poverty is a product of the mind, and it's mostly a product of a negative mind, a mind that artificially creates scarcity. Of course, there's no virtue in poverty, but becoming less is not a weakness, but rather it's a strategy. Becoming less, the act of becoming less, is not a weakness, but a strategy. It's oftentimes the recognition of duality, that duality that exists in us all. What do I mean by this? You see, most times, to most ideas have two sides. There's always two sides to an argument, multiple sides to an argument, if you dare say so. But mostly, to most ideas out there, in as much as we've been told that everything should be singular, when you present an idea as singular as one thing, it's easy to understand, it's easy to accept, and it's either this or that and not this and that. But the truth of it is that we live in a world where most ideas, most notions are dual. It has two sides. There's always two sides to it. And it's not about positive and negative. It's really not about opposite. It's about two things that come together, existing in perfect balance, perfect motion, perfect synchronicity, enough to sustain the idea, enough to be the completion of that thing. Most things in life, most ideas have two sides, especially growth. When you do not recognize less as part of growth, you are cutting yourself off from something essential and something really important. You are demonstrating your inability to not recognize the duality that exists not just in yourself, but in any idea. You are not seeing the complete argument. You are not able to get that God's eye view of a problem. That is actually what it means. If you think that growth is all about expansion, accumulation, self-actualization, and all of that maximization stuff, without recognizing that less is actually part of growth. Less is a strategy for growth itself. What that means is that you don't have a bird's eye view. You're not able to see clearly. You are not able to recognize that you are very much a chess piece on the board that is life, but at the same time, you are the player. That is really what becoming less is about. It's about recognizing that you are very much a thing as well as so much more. There's all that hype about becoming God, about becoming greater. Everybody wants to seem like they are powerful, everybody wants to seem like they are up there, but how do you define power without weakness? If you do not understand how weakness works, what it means to be truly weak, how do you really understand what power is about? How do you appreciate victory without failures, without surrendering? It's always two sides to an argument. Honestly, you have to have the ability to understand that less is not weakness, but rather a strategy. It's actually self-realization. It's actually self-actualization in the sense that you are able to recognize yourself as a thing, and so much more than the thing itself, as far as life is concerned. The act of becoming less is a strategy to life. It's the complete view of growth. And honestly, you kind of do not have a choice in the matter if this episode is for you. Yeah, you don't have a choice. You've most likely tried the strategy of accumulation, chase, hustle, and it probably didn't work for you, probably not getting you what you really need. Why not try out the strategy of becoming less? In nature, let's take a look around us. In nature, you would find that in accordance with the seasons, trees appear fuller, greener, prosperous, healthy, and it's that thing that happens when nature is overflowing with flowers, leaves, and the animals are happy and all of that stuff because it's the season. But then comes the other side of the season where there is scarcity, where leaves start to wither, where there are fewer flowers than you really want to count or something. It's the other side of abundance, where there's wither, where there seems to be lack. A lot of us do not appreciate that side of nature, but you have to recognize that it's a cycle, and that side is very much part of growth, because during the times that trees experience that wither, they have the opportunity to shade off leaves, barks, things that they do not need, toxins that they do not need, thereby creating space for new ones to come the next season. And you find a tree that weeks ago looks unhealthy, looks withered, looks like it's losing all its flowers or its leaves, only to appear fuller today, in the now, in the present. You see, growth is really not about sides, but rather it's about a cycle. It's about process. It's about impending doom, sort of something like that. Growth is really not just one-sided phenomena. It's about completion. And the act of becoming less is recognizing when a part of the process is not really for you. There's always the other side to consider, and that for you is becoming less as a strategy for more. It's recognizing yourself as a piece of life and all of life itself.